Hello and welcome. This is Kristen from the Online Selling Show, and I'm here today with a special episode to give you an explanation, some tips and tricks, and just my experience of dealing with being an online seller now for 22 years and the various shipping companies that are out there. Obviously, the most prevalent one that comes to mind is the USPS or the Postal Service, because most of us have that delivery to our house already. We're very comfortable with it. We understand, they're in our town. We know where they're at. There has been in the past 4 different methods that we would have for shipping options. The one I'm really not going to touch on is media mail. It's a very slow delivery service in what they have as a guarantee for when it has to be there. And it's very narrow in the scope of what you're allowed to use it for, which is typically just something that was a printed type of thing. Think like a book or maybe like a DVD or something. Media says it all. The other ones were priority, which some of us would all probably understand. That was the one with the delivery commitment between 1 and 3 days. It was a more expensive one, but it was also the one most touted on services like Amazon and eBay because of the quickness to get it to the end consumer. But it did come with a higher price tag. The other option that had been out there that was still in the past considered to be an expedited type of service was first class. They were delivering between 1 and 7 days, and they were one with the parameters. When I first started, they had to be under 13 ounces, and then in probably about 10 years or more, they upped it to a pound or less. Well, the third method was parcel post, and that was one that took anywhere from 2 days to 10 days for delivery. And the problem became that most of these bigger sites, especially like Amazon, weren't even really recommending that service because for the most part, it was even in some instances more expensive than priority. And it just was not, the rates weren't that big of a difference between priority and parcel post sometimes. And that difference was not one that you would be able to meet the deadlines that these service sites like eBay and Amazon would expect for you for delivery to the end consumer. So it really was not very widely used, and it was putting a lot of pressure on the post office in the past several years, especially since COVID, because we as shippers, especially if you're dealing with volume, we are expecting that you're going to make those delivery dates. And they were getting pushback from us because what was happening was not only were they not making the delivery dates, but there used to just be an annual increase. In January, it was usually the middle of January, you would see the stamp prices would go up, and usually at the same time, all of these shipping services would have an increase in rates as well. Well, then in the last probably 5 to 6 years, I'm talking before even COVID, they started coming out with this holiday increase that was supposed to be temporary. And it went into effect usually in the later part of the summer. So now we were getting 2 rate increases in a year. It was becoming very difficult to plan, especially because we would be putting on there, if you did flat rate or free shipping, you were doing this not knowing how long it would take for something to sell. And you were running into these problems where these rate increases were going up exponentially compared to where they had been in the past. So they were getting the post office and even Amazon were getting a lot of pushback, even eBay, that we as sellers could not predict what the post office was going to get. We were meeting our deadlines as far as being able to pack the item, get it to them, and then the end consumers were having a problem because they weren't getting the packages on time. Well, what happened in 2023 was that the post office decided to rebrand, is what I'm calling it, their first class mail and their parcel post. And they came out with a service called Ground Advantage. I do use Ground Advantage almost exclusively over priority now, where in years past, priority was a regular service for me and first class was a regular service. But now Ground Advantage has taken in the #1 spot. What they wound up doing for it was they kind of blended the two of parcel post and first class. They slowed down the delivery promise from 1 to 5 to now 1 to 7 days for first class, and there's still parcels under a pound for that section of ground advantage. Then they have the over a pound, and those things are usually similar in the same thing, that it's like 1 to 7 days ish, I say. I still have those issues where I'm on the East Coast, sometimes to the West Coast. It is definitely like a week. The always issues are going to be the Puerto Rico, the Alaska, the Hawaii, but it doesn't seem that they are taking as long as it had taken in the past for them to get their packages. One of the other items that they decided to do was that priority had always come with an included rate of coverage for lost and damaged packages and insurance. They never had that unless you purchased it with first class or with parcel post. They have now, I'm assuming, to make it seem better, because they've now charged you more, but they've given you a longer time period to take the package for delivery, decided to include that and make it seem like a selling point. I'm not saying that it's not one to use. I use it every day. I'm just explaining that where these things used to be common terms was parcel post, first class. If you're watching any of these older videos, they are outdated terms because they've now merged them, and ground advantage is now the terminology for what that type of service being offered is. The post office was doing this, but then at the same time, UPS started to go through an evolution of themselves. They've been going through, they have been primarily at one point just the only carrier that was doing stuff for the Amazon marketplace. Amazon has introduced their own delivery for home service now as well for a lot of region in the country. They were an option that you would be able to use on the Amazon marketplace, and then they came into eBay. And most of the time you only had ground as an option. They came in recent years with what is a ground saver. Truthfully, I don't notice much difference in delivery for them. Pricing is just not necessarily as bad. They seem to be very much in the same ballpark. What they did do was they've gotten very competitive on those under 1 pound packages, where before everything that was under a pound was charged at a 1 pound rate. They do seem like they have now lessened the fees and got more compatible in what was the first class region of the packages, and they do have a more competitive offering for those lighter weight packages. Having said that, I have no issue with either one of them. I find that both of them have always been very, the staff has been very receptive to any issues or problems that I've had. All of the carriers have seemed to, except for the one, I had the one, the local problem person was my route carrier for years. But other than that, I have had every carrier substitutes cell phone numbers. There's been ongoing dialogue with my postmaster. We just experienced the holiday for Veterans Day. They still sent somebody to my location on that Monday to pick up. This is the time of year where I would reach out to them and say, can we have a second pickup on Mondays? And I do know and I do respect that they're helping me out, but at the same time, I know that the volume that I am bringing into that post office is giving them a lot more resources and things available that do get to be used in their benefit because of having the volume of packages that I bring to them. I don't make a lot of unnecessary demands, so I feel that when it comes to this time of year, it's only maybe a handful of times that they'll be doing out of regularity type of pickups, if that would be the term, I'm not sure. UPS is one that I had to get into an account for pickup where I pay a weekly fee and I go on and I schedule a pickup as I need them. That's not an issue for me. The postmaster or the postal carrier comes every day for me and picks up. So both of them have been very good for me. I have no complaints about either one. The only complaint I have, and it's all of them is that if there is a lost package, I can file a claim and it doesn't seem to be very problematic. But when there is a damaged package, it is very cumbersome on the buyer. The buyer never wants to do anything that needs to be done. Sometimes they want them to keep all of the packaging. They want them to take it into the post office. It's not something that a regular buyer, especially when to them there wasn't anything they did in that, want to go above and beyond to do that. And I would have to get the package back to go in and do these filings myself. That truthfully, it's gotten to the point where I've just had to write it off. I mean, truthfully, if the buyer can just send me pictures of the damage, it doesn't seem like it's anything that is fixable or able to be resold at a lesser rate. We just go ahead and send them a refund, because we've not found that trying to get reimbursed on damaged items is very easy of a process, and it doesn't seem to really pan out when we've done it ourselves either. So having said that, one of the other things that has happened or changed in the past year to 2 years with them, there has been a service that is a blended between the post office and UPS, and it's been out there for years. It is known as SurePost. Most people would not have really noticed it much because the way the labels were presented, the very predominant barcode and all that on the service was UPS. That service was basically one that UPS would do the pickup. They would do the heavy lifting of getting this package for the most long distance of delivery and drop it off to your local post office for the final leg of the home delivery to you. At the time, though, that this was going on, I guess the post office was having really big problems because their labeling and barcodes and stuff for them to see was very small, and not much I would be drawn to seeing what that was. And I guess it was leading to problems. So they mandated that the labels had to be redone. And if you notice anything that you get now, there is a heavy presence of both that are showing up on the label. They both have a very prominent barcode. I can tell you, it seems like the final recipient's address is small. I wish they had done that a little bit bigger, but it had led to a lot of confusion out there between carriers even, as well as the sellers, because it started to get more prevalent to people and they didn't know what to do with the packages. We had made it a point to ask both of our carriers to ask what was the change. Was there something we were supposed to do? Both the carriers did not seem very well versed on it. They did not seem to have a lot of training and had to ask at their office to come back. And what wound up happening was, I guess it led to so much confusion, and not just my local region, but nationwide, that there was a memo put out that after a certain date, I believe it was in July of this past year, that any postal carrier that was given these SurePost packages that were not for the local delivery, meaning if I gave it to my local carrier, but it was going, out the door to my client, let's say in Colorado, those packages were supposed to be going to the unclaimed center, meaning it was just something that came into the post office, like not even having a label is almost how they took the position on it. And those packages get lost. Basically, they are right off. They've never gotten checked in. So that means that you don't have any coverage for it to be lost, and you would be out all that money. We had a lot of instances, not a lot, but I would say at least a handful of instances with the substitutes where we have our packages very distinctively on the loading dock for pickup that are two totally different places where the post office goes to get their packages and UPS goes to get their packages. And we had our substitute post office workers taking the packages for UPS, which was going to lead to a big problem. Thankfully, they have worked that out at the local region, but I will definitely tell you to be aware of that. One of the things I mentioned earlier was that I do have some extra pull, if you want to look at that, and getting some extra pickups. The post office may be closed on Monday holidays or on, Sundays. We do have some pickup, but that's because I have the volume. If you're having, I would say it how to be at least 50 packages, then that would behoove you to maybe pick up the phone and call to see if that is an option that you may need. For me, it is logistics that they will not realistically fit all of these packages into one vehicle, that it needs to be done. The other thing I have had to learn is that we have 3 tractor trailers that come into our post office between delivering and picking up, and there is the 9 o'clock and the noon truck, and those tend to be, well, the 9 o'clock can be full because of what came in after the fact, that the 6 p.m. truck could not fit, but the noon truck was leaving very empty. So it has behooved them as well to pick up early on Monday mornings from me, so that that truck can get more bulk put on it, freeing up space for them to have for the 6 o'clock truck. That is usually the volume of the day's package pickups. I've just had to learn these things. So knowing I have the volume, knowing I have the year-round volume, knowing that I've been there for so long, it's just a common thing that is now been established, that when I have a need, that I can call and get the supervisor and they will send somebody out. The other thing I can tell you, if you are running into issues, the post office does have a business office that is typically been available. I found them at a trade show, but they are a regional thing. They are there to be the intermediary if you're having issues with your post office. I have never had to really contact them but once or twice because of a carrier issue. The postmaster has usually been able to handle my problems. The most I have reached out to them has been for the need to have a bulk of shipping supplies. There was a time I needed a lot of things like the priority mail labels or the shipping flat rate envelope boxes, things like that, where if I go on the website, I'm only allowed to order like 10. I needed hundreds. So he was able to facilitate getting me the volume of shipping supplies that I would be allowed to have for free. Other than that, they will reach out to me once a year just to see if there's needs, and I haven't really had a need. So that has been worked out beautifully. UPS, we've had our carrier's cell phone number as well. He has been phenomenal. There's been times where, like right now, they're coming every day, and I forgot last week to schedule a pickup, and he has said to my husband, he sent him a text and said, "Hey, are you not needing a pickup today?" And my husband was like, "Yeah," like, "Kristen, what do you got?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I forgot." And it's worked out, like I said, phenomenal, because it is a give and take. Again, he does get some volume of knowing he has me, but they're working directly for UPS. I don't feel that maybe they're getting paid. I do know the post office worker gets paid based on her volume of what she's got on her route. I don't know if UPS is the same way, but they have always been. I've had a few different people for UPS, and they've all been very personable, very well understanding of our business. And there's been times where it's like, okay, I really need a package that is on your truck that's coming for delivery today. Can you hit us as early as possible? And they will, even though maybe they weren't scheduled to deliver to us until later in the day, they still will try to do that. The post office does have the Monday to Saturday as their delivery, so I'm well versed in that. The UPS is Monday to Friday. There have been a couple times this past year where, because my regular carrier started working Saturdays, maybe for 2 or 3 weeks during the very busy time of the year, he got approval from his supervisor and he did make a Saturday pickup from us. That was a little different and unusual, but that hasn't always been the case. Most of the time they are Monday through Friday, and that's structured to be that way. Then I'll get into the new player on the block. That has been FedEx. FedEx came in on the platform as an option to purchase labels from, but I never really used them. They never really showed up as any kind of an option in the field of meeting the quotes or delivery times. And I don't have any regular pickup. I don't have any regular deliveries coming from them. So they just were never really on my radar until the last several weeks. I don't know what changed with them. I know that there had been like a little trash talking going on between UPS and FedEx because they are direct competitors. But my experience with them was just getting these different vendors sending me goods through them. I wouldn't say that they're any different from anybody else. I don't think that they miss any more deadlines or their packages are any more, ill-handled than anybody else. But they just never had rates that were really out there that moved me to want to use their service until recently. I have started to notice recently that some of their rates are almost 30% less. And these are the rates that are both the ground saver rate or the ground advance rates. I don't know what changed in their dynamics of what put them in that cause, but they have over the last couple of weeks been showing up, and I have started to use them. Again, sometimes you may be a little apprehensive saying, well, I've never tried them. What does all this entail? What does it mean? And I tried them. I looked up to see what it would take for me to get pickup, figuring that they would be very compatible in pickup to what I've got with my ongoing account with UPS, and they were very strange. I mean, they were charging for a package pickup to be scheduled $3 a package, and that was the only like real option available to me online. And I thought, well, that's basically the savings of what I used in getting this cheaper rate. I did look up to see some local area drop-off places because I know I could drop off to Staples for UPS at times if I had to. And it made me a little, like having to just explore things. And I found that the Walgreens does accept. I went to one last week. I had probably about 8 or 10 packages of various sizes. I know at least one was a very large size package, and they took everything and it was fine. Well, then we did do more packaging, a lot more sales came in over the weekend. And on Monday, my husband went to take a lot of packages to another different location for Walgreens that's closer to our home. And for one, they only had a certain size locker that all of these packages had to fit in. Some of these packages were too large. They weren't even going to fit in the locker. And we had way more volume. And this locker was one that everybody has to use. So it was not going to be a viable solution for us. Being that it was Veterans Day, I knew I had another shipment coming. We just kind of had to run home to get back to continue packing. And I said, well, we'll deal with this on Tuesday because I was expecting a delivery to come in from FedEx. And in my past with FedEx, I mentioned that I had been getting deliveries from FedEx from other vendors. I've had times in the past where it was just very confusing to understand because I had a franchise from them, which means these people do not work directly for FedEx. And we had as many as 3 different delivery trucks in our yard at some point. There was Express, which my understanding is they are the direct FedEx employees. I would have Home and I would have Ground. And there would be times where, like I said, I had all 3 of them come in my yard. Never really understood all that, where they had all these different trucks on the road. And then I would have problems with the delivery, and my vendors would send me a call tag. And one would come and I would say, well, here, can you take this? And it was like, oh no, you have to call and schedule a delivery for that. And I would call to schedule the delivery and then still want to give it to one of them. And they would be like, oh, well, I'm Ground, that has to go to Home or whatever. And I'm like, none of this makes any sense to me. Thankfully, in the past couple of years, they did merge in my region, the Ground and the Homes. Now there's just the 2 different ones. I don't really ever have experience with Express. So we've dealt with, thank God, the same delivery driver over the past 1.5 to 2 years. And when he came on Tuesday to make this expected delivery that we had, my husband approached him and said, do you have any idea like where these packages, like, can you take them, where they're supposed to go? How can we deal with this? And he said, by all means, I'll take them all. And here's my cell phone number. Just give me a text and I'll be more than happy to pick them up. So it looks like for now, the FedEx thing is resolved. That makes me very happy because, like I said, I do notice a remarkable difference in rates. Again, I don't know anything about the end delivery of it yet. I haven't gotten anything that has given me feedback yet on whether I'm going to want to continue using them based on how they handle the packages and what the delivery times are. But that's been my experience with them. So I hope this gives you some explanation. I know it's probably very confusing. It may behoove you to go back and listen to this a couple different times because there's a lot of history that I'm giving you in there so that if you are watching some of this older video that may be out there, that it may explain to you why you're hearing certain terminology with them that's not being something that's discussed currently when you go to use the services or go into the location or to having conversation with other resellers. I will tell you that it really does, like I said, but it does benefit you to understand where their terminology is coming from, so that if you do have needs, you can understand on their same level what is restricting them, because there are certain things, like for instance, I am a rural route for the post office. There is definitely a distinction if you have it has to do with their unions and contracts, whether you have a city carrier or you have a rural route delivery. Those are some of the things you need to learn based on what their contracts are. For instance, I know that I have a carrier that is rural route and they are only obligated to have to come back to my house and make a pickup once. My carrier is phenomenal. She will come back a second time for me if need be, even a third time if need be. I really appreciate it. I don't try to push for a third time. The third time is where I go to the postmaster. If she can't pick up with 2 delivery or 2 pickups, that becomes to me, like I said, a supervisor situation. So I hope you got some good information out of this. Please leave some comments, some questions you may have down below. I would be more than happy to answer any of that. I would really appreciate it if you could give me a thumbs up if you did get some good information out of this. By all means, I would really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button down below. That would help me build this channel, but it would also put my future videos in your feed. And I'm going to say bye for now, and may you have a prosperous holiday season this year. Bye. I did forget, because I was so focused on explaining the different terminology of their services and basically leading into like the rates and stuff, that if you're more concerned, and it does come up at times, of what is going to be the delivery date, there is a difference in how your packages get handled. They are very similar, but there may be some things that you're not thinking about. One is that, like, we all probably have seen in our own purchasing, that for the post office to pick up, as I mentioned, there's tractor trailers that come in 3 times a day, and they pick the packages up and they take them out. In my area, they're taking them to a regional center, which I'm believing to be pretty much throughout the whole nation, that it goes to this regional center that then sends it to go, to the other regional centers throughout the country, where it gets then dispersed to come to you in your home. And, like I said, it's a collection up of a region going to a local place. Well, the same thing kind of happens for UPS. I happen to know that because in my particular town, my local hub makes the delivery from their location to mine in a certain radius, and I just happen to be on the very edge of that, and it benefits me because it cuts out a day of handling time from the UPS site, which means that when my carrier picks it up, he's taking it to the regional center that is the center that then forwards it to the other regional centers for delivery throughout the country. If I were to try and take my packages to another, let's say I mentioned Staples is a drop-off center, I happen to know that they are a pickup that goes to a substation type of place, where that loses a day in transit, because that substation place then sends it to the regional center, which is where I'm at. And it makes a difference sometimes if you're looking at it, especially around the holidays when people are very conscientious of delivery dates. You may want to have some discussion in your area, if you need to, about how the packages start flowing through the system, to understand, because if that is going to give you a problem, Amazon and eBay do very much pay attention to your delivery times, how quickly you're packing it, how quickly you're getting the stuff out, that you are using the appropriate type of shipping services to meet those expected delivery dates. I hope that gives you a little bit more explanation too on why maybe you're finding that sometimes your stuff may be taking a little longer, or you're finding problems that are happening where if you are dropping them off to different regions, maybe certain offices, it's not necessarily the staff at the office, but what service is being utilized in what territory they're at. So let me add that in here.